let's talk about some real news. Obviously, friend of the show, Hamdan Ballal, who only a couple of weeks ago was sitting right there, has won an Oscar for No Other Land. He was one of the co-authors and co-directors of No Other Land, a story documenting the day-to-day existence of Palestinians living in the West Bank under the illegal occupation of Israel. Hamdan Ballal was attacked by a group of rabid settlers in the West Bank, and then the Israeli occupying force came in and kidnapped him and detained him. Now, this is a normal part of the process, unfortunately, albeit cruel, but a regular part of the experience for every Palestinian, regardless of whether or not they have won an Oscar for detailing these exact events. Luckily, Hamdan is he's alive. He's not dead. And the lynch mob and the subsequent false detention did not, I mean, it harmed him physically, but he has now been released. There's updates from other friend of the show, Israeli minister of the Knesset, Dr. Ofer Kasif, which I will get to in a second. Let's talk about what happened that led up to these.
Award-winning director of No Other Land has just been released after being detained in the West Bank. Activists say police arrested Palestinian filmmaker Hamdan Ballal after Israeli settlers attacked him, leaving his head bleeding. The IDF says the altercation started when several people, quote, hurled rocks at Israeli citizens, damaging their vehicles. Israeli officials say when police arrived to break it up, attackers threw rocks at them. Ballal is one of 3 Palestinians accused of throwing those rocks, and ABC's Matt Rivers is in Tel Aviv following this story for us. So, Matt, what's the latest now?
Well, it does appear that he has been released out of police custody, and that's going to be to the great relief of his friends and family who have been extremely concerned since he was taken into custody yesterday.
Yeah, and the interesting part about the story, of course, is that immediately the framing that you hear by Western news outlets is that the Palestinians themselves actually kind of deserved it. Why did they deserve it? Oh, they were throwing rocks. Immediately adopting the idiotic pro-Israel framing on the matter. Like, oh, they did something that deserved the right-wing, far-right Jewish KKK mob coming in and brutalizing this person and their families. And then the ultra-nationalist military force that illegally occupies the West Bank coming in and packing him up and falsely imprisoning him. Ridiculous. Giving any air to the Israeli side on this matter as though they have any side whatsoever is basically defending Israel once again.
Evening over in the West Bank. We've been in touch with them ever since, and the big concern was they didn't know where he was being held, how he was being treated, and what he would eventually be charged with. We still don't know all the answers to those questions, but it does appear that he has been released. We've been in touch with his friends who say he is on his way home to go see his family. As is often the case with the West Bank, you have competing narratives about what happened here. You have the Israeli security forces version of events, which often say that it is Palestinians who start these things, that they are simply responding to Palestinian.
Why would you even bring that up? There's no reason to bring that up.
Attacks. And then you have the other side, which is the Palestinians who live there, the activists who are there, and they say that this was Jewish settler violence, people coming into their town as they do all the time. And we have seen rising incidents of settler violence over the past several years, provoking people.
Aren't you conflating being Jewish with the policy goals of the apartheid state of Israel by referring to it as a right-wing Jewish mob? No. Saying people who are part of the Jewish Power Party, or saying people that are Jewish themselves, like Jewish settlers themselves, operating like the Klan, saying that right-wing rabid ultranationalist settlers are the Jewish KKK is not conflating the entirety of Israel with Judaism. That's just what their ethno-religious background is. There's never been a moment where I've maintained the position that like Israel is doing anything for Judaism. I always talk about the false conflation of Judaism and Israel and how damaging that is with regular frequency. Yeah, that's like saying you're conflating Christianity by saying right-wing Christian nationalists. Exactly.
Attacking them, harassing them, throwing stones, and that it is simply people like Hamdan Ballal who are simply defending themselves and often get caught up in this violence and then are subsequently blamed by the Israelis for starting it in the first place. That is the constant competing narrative on both sides here, and it is a big topic of the film that ultimately won that Best Documentary Oscar just a few weeks ago. So now Ballal, directing a film about this, now is squarely in the middle of it. He is a resident of the West Bank.
Dude, how can you look at a documentarian who documented his day-to-day existence and then unironically experienced it again after winning an Oscar for documenting his day-to-day experience and still go, oh, well, you know, this is a hotly contested debate about both sides. It's like, no, dude, there is no both sides in this situation. There's no circumstance where I think this guy would turn around and say, well, in the Emmett Till lynching, a hotly contested debate took place. Did he actually whistle at a white woman or did he not whistle at a white woman? No, we know what happened. We know what happens in the West Bank every day. That is literally what the documentary was about. And now there is a living, breathing example post-documentary, because the documentary itself was already the experience that these guys had. What are you saying when there's no hotly contested narrative here? There's just the truth. There's no both sides in Auschwitz. There's no both sides in the Jim Crow South. And there's no both sides when it comes to Israel being an apartheid state. The only people that maintain the position of both sides when talking about Israel being an apartheid state are those who want to cynically defend Israel by muddying the waters, by saying this is simply a narrative. There is no debate here. Israel is 100% an apartheid state. That's the case.
And this is something he has lived before. And unfortunately, these kind of events, these incidents have happened in the past with increasing frequency. They are happening right now.
All right, Matt Rivers.
Yeah, the only hotly contested debate here is inside this person's mind as his conscience tries to speak out, but his mouth fights back and spits out nonsense. Yeah, the only debate in these circumstances is unironically a debate between wanting to maintain a career and keep getting elevated in the media, in your media job, versus saying the truth. That is the only debate here. And unfortunately, careerism wins out virtually every single time. Every single time they pick career.
Hey, no! Can we go back to the car? Guys, back to the car!
Hasan, I was formerly a very pro-Israel person, and you've helped me look at the situation with much more critically, and I'm ashamed of my former views, which I did hold quite deeply. It's been a source of serious internal turmoil for me recently, and I'm struggling to discuss it with my friends and family, but I do thank you for your messaging. It has helped me see how I've been misled my entire life. You and chatters may think you were preaching to the choir, but I've done a complete 180 on my Israel-Palestine views. No, I don't. This is why I do what I do. And there is no reason to feel shame about your former self. It's important. What you do now matters more than what you said in the past. Never forget that. Don't let anybody ever hold you back about your former views or your former self. This is a fundamental part of my worldview. And you're not alone in this community. Trust me. You might think that I'm preaching to the choir, but this choir certainly did not have all of this knowledge pre-October 7 or even longer than that. I've been talking about this issue for 10 plus years at this point, very publicly.
Now, Israel has used Hamas as a justification for everything from stopping humanitarian aid, from rolling tanks into Gaza to full tilt missile strikes.
Having said that, there are plenty of people that also understandably had a pro-Israel position due to a metric ton of social conditioning before ever encountering someone who just helps them understand it. Where it just somehow clicks. That's it. You are surrounded by people who have had similar experiences. Trust me. I actually retweeted something about this recently from one of my favorite Israeli historians, as a matter of fact, Avi Shalem. He had this to say. Moin Rabbani posted Avi Shalem's words. He said, Avi Shalem, by the way, is a Israeli Jewish historian, a very famous Israeli historian, as a matter of fact, whose family is from Iraq. He's from Iraq as well. I've used some of his work in the past to describe to you, ironically enough, while responding to Ethan Klein's context nuke, talking about how like Jews in Iraq actually were under threat for sure. synagogue bombings had taken place. Those synagogue bombings were conducted by Mossad because they wanted to create an environment of uncertainty so that their Zionist goals could be accomplished. Why won't he debate you? I don't understand. What do you mean? Because he would look like a fool. He does not know anything about the issues he speaks on. Obviously, I was radicalized in the archives. I was indoctrinated at school in Israel, and even more so when I served in the Israel Defense Forces in the mid-1960s. I believed that Israel was a small, peace-loving country surrounded by hostile Arabs who wanted to throw us into the sea, meaning that we had no choice but to stand up and fight. I accepted this Zionist master narrative until I became interested in the Arab-Israeli conflict as a historian. I spent a whole year going into the Israel archives every day, looking at the records which told me a completely different story, that Israel was aggressive, that Israel was deliberately provoking fights with its neighbors, and that Israel was not interested in peace. Israeli historian Avi Shleim, one of the new historians in Israel that played a formative role in uncovering the actions of the early Zionist brigades in the lead up to the Nakba and in the aftermath of that. His most formative work, of course, his most famous work, of course, is about the Mossad actions taken in Iraq. Avi Shleim himself is an Iraqi Jew originally. His family is from Iraq. Interestingly, growing up in New York City as an Orthodox Jew in yeshiva and in a radically pro-Israel environment, my experiences are very much like that of Professor Shleim's, except without the military service. It had been my impression that Orthodox Jews were less beholden to Zionism than the secular counterparts, at least throughout 1967. Wrong? Question mark. Asked Moen Rabbani. Zachary Foster, who I've also had on the stream, is another Jewish academic, specifically a historian of Palestine from Princeton University. His attitude and many other people's attitude about Israel changed only when they arrived at the truth about what Israel had done in perpetuity. This is but a blip on the daily activities of this hostile, ethno-religious supremacist apartheid state in occupied territory that it illegally occupies, the West Bank.
Back to the car!
Get in the car, get in the car.
Oi, 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 oi.
Get in, go.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Oh, good thing this window's working.
My window was broken.
Whose car? I can't go. This is a military. I think.
That was so scary, I'm so
Is this
sorry.
military?
This is the dashboard footage of the event. Here, this is asked about Israeli settlers attacking and beating Oscar-winning Palestinian filmmaker Hamdan Ballal, who was then detained by the Israeli army. Diana Butu explains the settlers and the army work in collusion, and the settlers are doing exactly what the army wants done. Here it is. I got to go.
Israeli army, as well as Israeli settlers, have been going after the people who are living in this area of Musafir Yatta. And we also know that in this area, the settlers have been emboldened because it's often the case that the Israeli army is backing these settlers as they're going out and attacking Palestinians. And despite the fact that there are often complaints filed against these Israeli settlers, it's more than 98% rate of closure of these files. In other words, nobody is held to account. In terms of what their rights are, that's a totally different matter altogether. And because there is a dual system of laws, there's a system of apartheid, where one set of rules applies to Palestinians, another set of rules applies to Israelis. You can only imagine what it means for somebody like Hamdan, where he's going to have to try to get lawyer after lawyer to represent him.
What's also ironic about this paradigm is that the Palestinians that are living under a belligerent occupation that is illegally occupying their lands, ironically enough, actually have a legal right to resist against Israel and Israeli settlers. So technically, like even if they were to attack settlers in that regard, they would be well within their legal rights to do so under international law. Like, for example, there is the Jenin brigades, right? And Tulkarem, and in different parts of the West Bank where the Israeli government is actively bombing the West Bank and actively rolling tanks through the West Bank in an effort to squash any kind of resistance against the Israeli occupying force. This is a right to self-determination. They have that right. They have that moral responsibility and the right to fight back. Israel does not have a legal right to attack Palestinians in the West Bank. Israel's occupation of the West Bank is completely illegal. Its settlements are completely illegal. This is important to understand. This is important to recognize. So it's like doubly messed up that these guys will try to be like, oh, they threw rocks in our direction. You have no right to be there. In any case, Democracy Now! Did some coverage on this as well, but we've talked about this issue extensively at this point. I don't want to belabor the point here, and I want to talk about Ofer Kasif, who went to the West Bank and interviewed Ballal and Hamdan after he was released.
Hello everybody, my name is Ofer Kasif. I'm a member of the Knesset with El Jabba, with the Democratic Front for Peace and Equality. I came here not only on my name but to represent the Communist Party and Hadash, El Jabba, to express our solidarity with the people of Mesafriata, of Susia, especially with Hamdan, and to wish you all the best. We are firmly with the people with the all Palestinian people who've been going through hell, especially in the last 18 months. Genocide in Gaza and ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. And what we saw here is only one example out of hundreds, if not thousands. And I call, like my
Did he say communist? Yes. This is the Communist Party in Israel.
friend said, I also would like to appeal to the whole international community. Don't leave the Palestinian people behind. Don't leave the people of Mesafriata behind. They need your support. We all need peace and justice. And the settlers, the settlements, under the auspices of the occupation forces and the encouragement and support of the fascist government, they are responsible for the whole bloodshed. Do whatever possible to stop it. We want to live together as brothers and sisters, Palestinians and Israelis, Arabs and Jews. We are not enemies. We are not enemies. The real conflict is between those who do evil and those who seek justice, not between Arabs and Jews. Don't forget that. Be on our side, the side that seek justice.
Isn't this guy like a pawn of the Israeli government? That's such a funny way to talk about a member of the Knesset. Yes, Dr. Ofer Kasif is a member of the Israeli Knesset. He is one of the few people in Israel that is an open anti-Zionist. I've had him on this broadcast before. As a matter of fact, directly after October 7, I had him on this broadcast. One of the things that we talked about was how disappointed he was in Bernie Sanders, who he had reached out to numerous times leading up to October 7, specifically on the issue of the West Bank pogroms that were taking place, and how Bernie Sanders did not respond to him. So he is a real, straight up anti-Zionist, one of the rare few.
And Bassel, they got like the Oscar, whatever. And the main aim for that, just to explain about the situation and what's going on in Mesafriata and Susia and Tuan and everywhere. So, as you heard like the story of Hamdan, it's happening for everyone. But to target someone like Hamdan and Bassel and other activists, it means like there is like a very strong message. They don't want like our Palestinian message to go all over the world. And it's like the time for everyone who believe in the human rights, who believe in peace and dignity, to listen to us. We are facing a very organized militant militia that took the law in their hand. Settlers, moving around with the military uniform. It means we are under military control. It means we have to obey their rules. It means we are victims of all this militia that's supported by this fascist government, the government of Ben Gvir and Smotrich. So it means we are here, we will stay on our own land in spite of all these crimes, okay? But we need your support. It's so needed, at least like to say your word. It's the time to end this sorry, Israeli occupation.
Yeah. I want to remind people that the American government actively shipped small arms to the West Bank that got into the hands of these violent, rabid settlers. They were directly handed to them, as a matter of fact, by Itamar Ben-Gvir, and that those settlers have unironically done some damage to other Israeli people that they have assumed were Palestinian. Just something to remember.